Thank you, PPDC Jen. Timer muna. Baka kasi mag-overtime ako at batuhin ako ni EnP Joy Bailey ng cellphone niya. Anyway, good morning. I have never seen so many planners in one room. Congratulations to all of us, to the organizers, to President Mia, and to all of us for being here. I think, well, maybe a few, most probably si Ma'am Dali can recall the times when lahat tayo dumaan kay Ma'am Dali. And also the fact na I was sort of deciding, where do I stand? Part of me wants to stand here para matakpan yung tiyan ko. Part of me wants to stay there so I can sort of move more naturally. Anyway, I'm not an expert on the National Tourism Development Plan, but I'm here to share what we have been doing in Bohol and how it can be said to be in correspondence to what is espoused in the National Tourism Development Plan. Is the clicker working ba or? Kasi I have hindi. Okay. So long distance relationship kasi. So I'll be saying next slide for more than 100 times, and I hope to make this as quick as possible. Next slide. A little recall on looking at things in the big picture. I presented this in the last presentation of mine, so some of you will probably recall this, the definition of sustainable development, although there are as many definitions as there are schools of thought, but I happen to prefer the one that's in the Brundtland report on being the sort of development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of the future generations to meet their own needs. And parallel to that is the definition of sustainable tourism. Next. Which takes full account of current and future economic, social, and environmental impacts, addressing the needs of visitors, the industry, the environment, and host communities. Next. I'll have to refer back, as I think I probably do this with every presentation, I'll have to refer back to the SDGs and the National Development Framework to sort of illustrate that planning doesn't happen in a vacuum, and especially not for LGUs. And this is also true in Bohol. Now, when we plan, we take into account how, what the global priorities are, what the national priorities are, regional priorities, etc. Okay. Next. So, of course, the usual visual of NEDA to illustrate how there must be an alignment of plans. Next. And I think our keynote speaker, Mr. Titon Mitra, presented this earlier. So basically, of course, I won't go through all of the 17 SDGs, and certainly not the 169 targets and 230 indicators. But the importance of this slide is to show you that as we plan, as they say, we think globally and act overly, hindi, locally. So, next. And the same holds true for our national vision, yung ambition natin, 2040. By 2040, the Philippines shall be a prosperous, predominantly middle-class society where no one is poor. Our peoples will enjoy long and healthy lives, are smart, bawal daw bobo, hindi lang, and innovative, and will live in a high-trust society. Next. So, I'm pretty sure you're also familiar with this overall strategic framework of the national government, malasakit, pagbabago, kaunlaran. And so I won't explain this because this is what NEDA does on a regular basis. Next. And the development agenda, which, well, the most important points being high and sustained economic growth of 7 to 8% per year, and more inclusive growth that generates mass employment, reduces poverty, and equitably distributes opportunities. Also characterized by high public trust in government through good governance. Next. So these are the plan targets, as already mentioned. GRDP, employment, and 21.7% poverty incidence. It's still high, but of course, we have to remember that we're coming from a really high poverty incidence for the country. Next. One of the more recent developments that I came across while preparing for this presentation was an activity of the Department of Tourism where the Secretary urged developers to both protect environment while spurring inclusive growth. Next slide. And what struck me was this paragraph. The Cabinet Secretary, however, said construction and development should also promote sustainability, adding that a number of tourism destinations in the Philippines have been located in some of the most ecologically and culturally sensitive areas as Bohol, Palawan, and Batanes. Okay, so sustainable tourism development should lead to the management of all resources in such a way that economic, social, and aesthetic needs can be fulfilled while maintaining cultural integrity, essential ecological processes, biological diversity, and life support systems. So that's something for Bohol, among the provinces mentioned, to take stock of. And thankfully, next slide, it all started for Bohol in 1997 with a visioning process that came out of a participatory process. With a vision that came out of a participatory planning process. The vision, next. Yan, ang hilig-hilig kasi sa animation, so I have to say next. Yan. Bohol is a prime eco-cultural tourism destination and a strong, balanced agri-industrial province with a well-educated, God-loving, and law-abiding citizenry, proud of their cultural heritage, enjoying a state of well-being, and committed to sound environmental management. Before this vision, Bohol, the provincial government really had no idea where to go. This was born out of a participatory process that took months to craft the vision, and it was the stakeholders who actually realized, let's go into tourism, but not mass tourism, specifically eco-tourism. And in fact, there were consultants that told us along the way. In fact, we presented the crafted vision initially, and there was one consultant who said, you'll never go anywhere with ecotourism. Industrialization is the way to go. But that was actually what spurred the provincial government, especially the board members, stoked their fires into being more passionate about ecotourism, saying, why should we let what is happening in other provinces determine where we want to go? So next. There's the mission, which is, of course, related to the vision. Next. Basically, this timeline is to highlight the fact that planning processes in Bohol have to be participatory. All of these plans, through consultations with mayors, vice mayors, barangay captains, heads of national government agencies, business, academe, women's groups, to the church and religious sector, paulit-ulit naming pinesent to, just to make sure that we were covering all bases. Next. And this is what we came up with for our overarching development framework. Our call to development is Green Bohol, to always emphasize the fact that development must be sustainable and it must never be pursued at the expense of the environment. Of course, can't memorize all that, but there's a useful way of remembering what's most important, inspired Hitit Bohol towards the Big Leap. Big Leap stands for Bohol's inclusive growth leads to equitable and accelerated prosperity, with the fullest intent of making sure that it has a positive impact on the poverty incidence of the province. Otherwise, para ke? Co-authored by our Governor, Chato, as he was a congressman then, together with Senator Dick Gordon. Key features, it declares a national policy for tourism as an engine of investment, employment, growth, and national development. Of course, as expected, the DOT is the primary planning, programming, implementing, and regulatory government agency. These are the objectives. There are a lot, but I will probably focus on those in red, which I highlighted as relevant to this presentation. To develop, adopt, and implement a national tourism action plan, and that's why we have the NTDP as a result of the Tourism Act. Ensure that tourism development protects and promotes the general well-being of Filipinos. Develop responsible tourism with the participation of local communities. I will show you a few examples later. And promote and ensure the country's capability to be a world-class convention center. If you notice, dumadami yung mga ASEAN, for example, summits natin. Presenting the Tubigon loom weaving And the Loon Coral Stairs, notice there's no longer any Loon Church because the Loon Church was totally damaged by the earthquake. So what the tourists do actually is they go up the stairs and then the tour guide says, surprise, wala na ang church. So, loko lang. Uy, I said that joke the last presentation, it still works. The next tour takes you to the Albur Calamay industry because you don't mix Hagna and Albur in one destination. So there are a lot of destinations you can go to depending on what you want to experience. And of course, there's the Dimiao Children's Rondalia.